welcome back everybody to macro_action. That's the same all across my social media at Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, everywhere you can see me as macro_action. And today I'm going to discuss the questions people ask me once they see my photos. And obviously the first question I always get, and it's astounding how much I get this question, is how do you get these pictures? I get that almost every time. A lot of the time, next question is, what's your settings? Can you please give us a little pointer? With that, I normally either point them to, I do tell them the settings, but my settings change on different photos. There's no cheat sheet I've got or anything like that. And a lot of the times I'll point them towards my Flickr account where I leave all my settings open. In the same vein, next thing is kind of what's your gear? And again, as you know me, I've got gear acquisition syndrome. I use a lot and I have used a lot of equipment in the past. So again, gear is something that I change all the time. Obviously, I'm into action and flight shots and, behavioral shots. And again, one of the biggest questions is, do you pin your subjects? They think that I've pinned the bee or wasp or whatever it is, and it is in just suspended and I removed the pin. I don't know. And obviously the answer to that is no, don't do that. It's all flying subjects and moving or whatever. It's not pinned or anything like that. In the same vein, like removing the pin, is the shot photoshopped? Now, I do use Photoshop as my photo editing suite. And the reason why I use Photoshop rather than Lightroom is more to do with the way when I first opened it anyway, it just was in a layout I could understand. It just came out differently. It's the user interface, and I'm getting old now, don't really understand technology that well. It was just the easiest thing for me to use. Photoshop takes a lot more processing power because it's meant to be not the higher grade, it's meant to be for other things. I just prefer using Photoshop anyway. But I don't remove stuff, I don't add stuff, I just leave it as it is. Obviously, I do edit my raw files, and I do use Topaz Denoise and Topaz Sharpen and things like that. But other than those things, I don't do anything to my images. I just edit and then maybe enhance them or take away the noise. That's it. How long do I scout the location for? This is a bit of a tough one really, because sometimes I'll research a little bit, like I wanted to see these swallowtails, butterflies that is, and it's up in, I think it was Hinckley or something like that. And I was on the way to pick up a lens there once anyway, so I thought, well, while I'm here, I might as well go down there. But other than that, it's normally where I can find time to sit and find a subject, or somewhere I've been before and I know there's a good batch of subjects. Do you know the insects you're shooting? Now, sometimes I do, and sometimes I go again back to the same site because I know there's a subject I'd like to see there, and I know it's there, and I know it's abundant, and I just want a better picture than what I've had before of it. But most times I don't really know what I'm going to shoot, and insects are where they're so abundant and where they do so many different things. You can get different insects coming into the same patch of area that you've been to before. So even though sometimes I know exactly what I've seen there before, there'll be new things in that same area that I've never seen before. And no, I don't know the Latin names for hardly anything. I am not a scientist. I'm just a photographer who likes taking pictures of insects. I love this one. Did you take that with your phone? Because obviously I'll take out my phone and I'll show pictures to people. And obviously the first thing I'll say to them is, I wish I could, because if I could, I wouldn't need my Z9, Z8, R5, the Olympus, the Sony. I wouldn't need any of it. I could just use my phone. So no, I didn't take it with my phone, although I have taken a couple of nice videos. And one of the first insect shots I ever took was on my phone, which introduced me to the world of insects. But the reason why I couldn't use my phone for these, I might try one day, but the reason why I couldn't use my phone for it is partly because I'm rubbish at setting manual on the phone. It's hard to hold. This is why a dedicated camera is actually easier. It's not because it's better or anything. It's just better to hold and manage and do the things you want to do. With your phone, you have to touch the phone, you have to, it's a faff. Another abundant question I get is, did you get that with your first shot? Could have been, but I highly doubt it. I don't really know the answer to that question a lot of the time because I don't know where in the sequence it was. I go back to my images a lot and post from the past. So I'm not looking at, was that my first shot in that sequence? I'd have to literally go into it and look at it. And that moves on to the next question, which is, how many shots did it take you to get that? And again, this is one of those things that it's like, if I'm in a good mood that day, I could possibly hit it in my first try. But if I'm really, really poor or under the weather or something like that, it could take me 100, 200 shots to get one decent. I'm not going to say my level is better than anyone else's, but what I would call a decent shot. It could take more than that. This also, again, depends on, am I trying to get an easy subject or am I trying to shoot a harder subject? Because if I'm trying to shoot a harder subject and I know that it's a shot that I've never had before and it takes me 1,000 shots, then so be it. Doesn't matter how many shots it took me to get that. I've never had that shot before. So I don't mind that. Even if it's more, I don't mind that. It's the quality of the shot and the type of shot. Do you have a lot of patience? Or you must have a lot of patience, which is not really a question, but I'm saying you must have a lot of patience. And I don't have any patience at all. And I think that's why partly I'm into behavioral photography. I like walking around, seeing things, grabbing them. I'm not really into sitting in one place, waiting for one single solitary subject to come along and then getting the shot of that single solitary subject. I'd rather go to where there's an abundant source of things happening and then get that. And then if something happens alongside that, then that's a side issue. But I'm more into knowing I'm going to get shots rather than going for the impossible shot that might not happen. So I'm not going to sit there for 5 hours waiting for one subject because that's not going to happen. 10 minutes is actually kind of too long for me. I get itchy if I'm sitting there for 10 minutes, which is a bit different than if you're in a bird hide looking for something, because if you're in a bird hide, you can wait that kind of time, but usually maybe you'll have somebody you're talking to or something like that. I find insect photography a lot less sociable, although I have been out with people to shoot insects. For what I do, you don't all gather around that one subject. And even if you were shooting, stacking with flashes, I think you'd kind of probably have to go one at a time to shoot it. As in, even if you're all standing around, you would still have to shoot one at a time to get the best angle. I think it's kind of a solitary pursuit, I'd say. I've talked about this before. Do you manually focus? Yes. Do you autofocus? Yes. I use both. And the reason I use both is sometimes there'll be a subject that's very hard. Like with insects, they've all got different patterns. They've all got different things they do. Bees are one of the easiest things to do because you know it's going to come to a flower. It needs to pollinate. Well, it's not there to pollinate. It's there to get the pollen, make it into honey or make it into a food source. Other insects don't do these things. They do. Butterflies do it. Butterflies are very skittish. They go off really quick and they're very erratic. Bees are easy. So a lot of the time I'm not thinking really I've got to manually focus on one or to pinpoint, because I know where it's going to be. I know kind of what it's going to do. But if there is a difficult subject, it's good to be able to manually focus whereabouts you think the subject is going to be, or if you can get it right on the subject. And then what I like to do is let the autofocus take over, especially as I'm shooting 20 frames a second. And there is times when I can do that, manually focus, hit it, autofocus, and I can hit that thing 20, 40, 60, depending on how many seconds it stays roughly in the same place. So you can use both alongside each other. And another thing I do alongside that is, if I'm finding something even more difficult sometimes, I'll focus on a flower quickly that's at the same distance and then shoot it over here. So I've focused on that flower just to get where I am and then shoot it. That's because sometimes it's quicker to focus on something that's got a lot of contrast than trying to manually focus to that point. Not all manual focus is quick, so sometimes it might take you a couple of spins to get there, whereas if I'm using autofocus to shoot this flower here, it can be in an instant and then I'm here. Do you use flash? No. Simple answer to that is no. I love natural light photography. I don't like carrying a lot of bulk with me, and also I think it looks more aesthetically pleasing afterwards if I don't use flash. But that's not always the case, and as I've seen with some other people's photos, especially recently, I've noticed that the flash fills in points that I wouldn't get, and because it's diffuse light, it doesn't give, especially on black subjects, it doesn't give that shine, and it doesn't give I kind of get aberrations sometimes with certain subjects. So for those subjects, I might try flash. The other reason I don't use flash is because I can shoot at any distance. And I'd say normally with flash, you've got to know your distances, because flash will only burst out a certain distance before it starts not making so much of a difference. And then your job is to overpower the sun or whatever natural source of light there is with flash. And I don't think at some distances you can do that. So probably that's why they get the black background. I don't even know, actually. I shouldn't really say, I shouldn't speculate because I don't actually know. But yeah, that's why I don't use flash. I just prefer natural light. Is it all skill? Yes, 100%. No, it's not. Yes, it is to a certain point. I would say, honestly, 70% skill, 30% luck. To get the angles I want to get the shots I want to get sometimes is, yes, it took me skill to work out where it was going to be and work out what was going to happen. But I need that bit of luck in there as well. I need my camera to autofocus quickly or manually focus myself quickly. That is the skill part, obviously. But there's other things. I need maybe the subject to stay on that plane of focus for longer, because if it moves to you lot, if it moves this way or that way, as in front and back, it comes off that plane of focus, and if your lens and camera can't keep up with that quick enough, you're going to get an out of focus shot. So there is quite a big element of luck, and it's not 1% element of luck, it's quite a big percent element of luck. I've had shots where I shot one insect and another insect came in as I was shooting that one, or a bird or whatever. So it's for it to be in the frame at the same time. If I haven't noticed that, that's an element of luck. I do scout the scene, so I kind of know what's going on, but there is sometimes where things happen that I wasn't planning on. Even the way that a body can turn, like if something's just moving around, you could get like say a dragonfly turning on its side as it's moving. Normally dragonflies stay level, they'll stay like that, but all of a sudden it might turn and be banking. That's a nice shot, but it required an element of luck. It wasn't me knowing it was going to bank at that time, because it's split second. Is your gear expensive? Yes. Is your macro gear expensive? Yes, but it's all relative, because macro lenses, I think the most expensive macro lens that I've ever, or that I know of really, is roughly around about £1,200, which in the big scheme of things is really cheap. That is a really cheap lens if you're going to get good images out of it. If you go for the best birding lens available, that's probably like one of the most expensive consumer lenses, is the Nikon Z600mm f4 with the built-in teleconverter, and that'll run you around about £15,000. So it is relative. Is my gear expensive? No, not really. Could I get away with much cheaper gear? Yes. Use the D500 with a cheap lens to shoot insects in flight. I don't even know if I ever did it with a macro lens. So the cheapest macro lens I've got, that the one that I used to use the most, was only about £250. So I'm wondering, the D500 with that, D500s now you could probably get for about £400 or £500. Maybe more, I don't know, maybe they're turning into classics, but so maybe you can get the whole thing all in £600-700. It is expensive, it's still a lot of money, but relative to what camera equipment can cost you, it's not a lot of money. And you're going to try in the summer with cheaper gear? Yes, you can bet your bottom dollar. Do you get scared of the insects that you shoot? And the answer to that is Yes, 100%, until I put the camera in front of my face, and then I forget that I was scared. So I am a scaredy cat when it comes to insects of all shapes and sizes. To be quite honest, the more time's going on, the less scared I'm getting, because I'm getting so used to it now. I even held a spider the other day and let it run around my hand, and I was like, what am I doing? And then I thought, yeah, well, I know it's not going to kill me. This is something that I've had to come along and realize, it's not going to kill me. Oh, I've just remembered another one I got, and this was just the other day, actually. I was talking to somebody I know, one of the parents at the school, and he was asking, I've always wondered, why do you need to use the viewfinder? Because we were talking about mobile phones and DSLRs and things like that, because he said, my one hasn't got one, or he hasn't got one, I can't remember. But he was just wondering why we need the viewfinder. Now, you imagine a flying insect coming along, holding a mobile phone for a sec, trying to get it in the viewfinder. That's one thing. On a DSLR. Now, you're trying to hold the DSLR or mirrorless camera and trying to, on the back screen, trying to find this in your screen, trying to find it. That's a very hard thing to do. It's much easier to put your eye to the viewfinder and have that whole world in there that you can see. It's a lot easier to see how sharp things are and things like that just through the viewfinder. That's why even when I delete my photos, I look through the viewfinder. So to me, the viewfinder is not necessarily, it doesn't make you professional or anything like that. It's easier to frame up subjects. It's just easier to do things with the viewfinder. And yeah, that probably does make you a bit more experienced than somebody that just holds a phone like that. But although there are people that just do things like that. But yeah, that was just a little bonus one. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. I need to build this channel, especially before the summer comes, because I want to get this out to as many people as I can. And when the summer comes, obviously, I'm going to be getting out there, doing as much as I can for you guys. So let's share. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you on the next one.